The clink of wine glasses and the gentle strum of a piano filled the opulent dining room of the Gilded Vine, one of Seattle's most exclusive restaurants, perched high above the city's waterfront. Amid the sleek glass tables and soft glow of pendant lights, Sarah Bennett moved with quiet efficiency, her black uniform fading into the background as she refilled water glasses and cleared plates. At 26, she was a shadow in this world of affluence, her presence noted only when a guest needed another pour of Pinot Noir or a clean fork. Her auburn hair was tied back in a neat bun, her fair skin tinged with fatigue, and her green eyes held a weariness that masked her youth. Sarah had mastered the art of invisibility. It was a skill sharpened in the rough neighborhood near Seattle's Old Port District, where she lived in a small apartment with her mother, Diane Bennett. The area, lined with faded warehouses and dim streetlights, stood in sharp contrast to the elegance of the Gilded Vine. Families like hers, working class, scraping by on modest wages, were overlooked by the city's sparkling skyline. The local clinic, understaffed and overstretched, offered little hope for Diane, who battled a rare neurological disorder requiring costly experimental treatments. Sarah had abandoned her linguistics program at the University of Washington, where she'd focused on Japanese, to work double shifts and pay for her mother's care. Every cent she earned went to keeping Diane alive. Tonight, as she glided between tables, her phone vibrated in her pocket. Another call from the clinic likely. She couldn't check it now, not with her manager, Mr. Callahan, eyeing her sharply. Callahan had a particular contempt for Sarah, often grumbling about people like her not fitting in at the Gilded Vine. His words stung, but Sarah buried her pride. This job paid better than any other she could find with only a partial degree, and pride was a cost she could. As she passed the bar, she murmured to the bartender, "Mia, Table 7 needs another bottle of the 12 Napa Valley Cabernet, and Mr. Peterson at 12 says his steak is overdone." Mia sighed. That guy would complain about a meal served by gods. Sarah managed a faint smile, but her heart wasn't in it. Her day started at dawn, tending to Diane before hurrying to her morning job at a community health center, and ended here, in the polished chaos of the restaurant. Energy for small talk was a distant memory. The restaurant's glass doors parted, and Callahan straightened, his demeanor shifting to deference. "Ethan Brooks," he whispered to the staff. "Table 1. Flawless service." Sarah paused, the name familiar. Ethan Brooks, CEO of Brooks Innovations, a tech empire dominating Seattle's business landscape. She glanced at the man being led to the prime table overlooking Puget Sound. Tall, with angular features softened by piercing blue eyes, he carried a quiet confidence. His tailored suit likely cost more than her annual rent. And the woman on his arm? Lauren Mitchell, daughter of a prominent venture capitalist and his fiancé, per the society pages, shimmered in a dress adorned with delicate jewels that caught the light. Sarah was assigned to their section, a duty she approached with weary acceptance. Wealthy patrons like Brooks often tipped poorly, distracted by their glamorous companions. "Good evening," she said, presenting menus with practiced poise. "Welcome to the Gilded Vine. May I start you with a drink?" Ethan barely looked up, his focus on Lauren. "The 8 Dom Perignon," he said. Lauren's gaze swept over Sarah with a faint smirk. "Still water chilled." Sarah nodded and withdrew, the familiar ache of being unseen settling in her chest. As she returned with their drinks, her phone buzzed again. 3 quick pulses, the clinic's emergency code. Her stomach sank. "Excuse me," she murmured, stepping toward the kitchen. "I'll send someone for your order." Ethan's voice halted her. "Hold on, we haven't ordered yet." His tone carried the weight of someone unaccustomed to delay. "I'm sorry, sir," Sarah said, her hand brushing her phone. "Family emergency." Before he could object, she slipped into the service corridor and answered. Ms. Bennett?" Dr. Nguyen's voice was tense. "Your mother's condition has deteriorated. The current treatment isn't controlling her seizures. We need your approval for a new protocol." Sarah leaned against the wall, her eyes closing. "What's the cost?" A pause. "Roughly 35% more than the current plan." 35% more than the thousands already draining her savings? "Do it," she said, her voice cracked. "I'll make it work." She hung up, her mind spinning. Losing this job was unthinkable, especially now. Back in the dining room, she was startled to find Ethan's party still waiting, his expression one of mild annoyance. "I apologize for the delay," she began, but her phone buzzed again. Not the clinic, but a Japanese country code, her language partner in Tokyo, Aiko, probably wondering why she'd missed their weekly session. She declined the call, but it rang again. With an apologetic glance at the table, she answered in fluent Japanese. "Aiko, this isn't a good time." The voice on the other end was frantic, rambling about a failed tech deal. "You've got the wrong number," Sarah replied, still in Japanese. "I'm just a student, a server. I don't know anything about patents." She ended the call, turning back to find Ethan watching her, his eyes sharp with curiosity. "You speak Japanese?" he asked, leaning forward. "Fluently?" Sarah shifted, uneasy. "Yes, sir. I studied Japanese linguistics before things changed." His gaze held hers, evaluating. "Impressive," he said, glancing at the man beside him, Daniel Carter, his senior advisor. "Very impressive." As the meal progressed, Sarah felt Ethan's attention shift from indifference to interest. When he handed her the check, he included a business card. "Brooks Innovations, my office tomorrow at 10 a.m. We have an opportunity for you." Sarah stared at the card, her pulse racing. "I have another job in the mornings." "Reschedule it," Ethan said, rising to leave. "This is worth your while." As he departed with Lauren clinging to his arm, Sarah gripped the card. Her thoughts a storm of possibility and doubt. A role at Brooks Innovations could mean better care for Diane, maybe even a chance to finish her degree. But the offer felt too sudden, like stepping into a world she wasn't sure she could trust. That night, in their cramped apartment, Sarah sat by Diane's bedside, the dim glow of a bedside lamp casting shadows across her mother's frail form. Diane's trembling hand reached for hers. "You're pushing too hard, honey," she whispered, her voice soft but warm. Sarah's mind drifted to childhood evenings when Diane, despite her illness, would spin tales of brave girls who tamed storms. Those stories had been her mother's gift, a shield against a world that often felt unkind. "I'm fine, Momo," Sarah lied, wiping a tear. But as she glanced at the business card on the table, she sensed her life was on the cusp of change. For better or worse, she couldn't yet tell. Sarah stood in the tiny kitchen of her apartment, the faint buzz of a flickering bulb the only sound in the early Seattle morning. The city's skyline sparkled faintly through the window, a distant world she'd never reach. She stirred a bowl of rice porridge, Diane's favorite, though her mother rarely ate much anymore. The business card from Ethan Brooks sat on the counter, its sharp edges stark against the chipped countertop. Sarah's heart churned with hope and apprehension. A job at Brooks Innovations could change everything. Better health care, a moment to breathe, but the uncertainty weighed heavily. Diane's voice, weak but warm, called from the bedroom. "Sarah, you're up early again." Sarah forced a smile as she carried the tray to her mother's side. Diane, pale and frail beneath a worn blanket, seemed to shrink daily, her once bright eyes dulled by pain. Yet her smile held the same fierce love Sarah had always known. "I've got a meeting today, Mom," Sarah said, setting the tray down. "Something that might help with the bills." She didn't mention Brooks Innovations, unwilling to spark hopes she couldn't promise. Diane reached for her hand, her grip faint but firm. "You carry too much, sweetheart." Sarah's throat tightened. She thought of a letter she'd found last night, hidden in a box of keepsakes. A note Diane had written years ago, when Sarah was small. "I've sacrificed everything to shield you from those who'd use us for their gain," it read. "But you, my girl, are worth it all." The words had kept Sarah awake, stirring questions she'd never voiced. Why had they left their old life? What had her mother fled? As Sarah headed to Brooks Innovations, the Port District's gray streets felt heavier than usual. Shuttered storefronts and tired faces underscored the city's neglect of families like hers, left to survive, while the elite dined at places like the Gilded Vine. The local clinic, where Diane's treatments were barely funded, symbolized that divide. A place where the poor waited hours for care the wealthy could secure instantly. Sarah's jaw clenched. If Ethan Brooks's offer was genuine, it could be her chance to push back against that injustice, even if just for her mother. The gleaming tower of Brooks Innovations dominated downtown Seattle, its mirrored facade reflecting the morning light like a beacon. Sarah, in her only blazer and a skirt from a thrift shop, felt out of place among the polished professionals streaming through the glass doors. The security guard raised an eyebrow at her name but waved her through after a quick call. The elevator whisked her to the 45th floor, where Daniel Carter, Ethan's reserved advisor, greeted her with a curt nod. "Miss Bennett, this way." The office was a portrait of power, expansive windows, minimalist art, and Ethan Brooks standing at the center, his presence commanding yet oddly approachable. "Ms. Bennett," he said, gesturing to a chair. "Thanks for coming." Sarah sat on the edge, clutching her worn bag. "Your opportunity?" she asked, her voice steady despite her nerves. Ethan's lips twitched, as if he appreciated her directness. "Our lead interpreter had a stroke yesterday. We have a critical negotiation with Sakura Systems, a Japanese firm, next week. Your Japanese fluency, business level, technical, is rare." Sarah blinked, processing the offer. $10,000, 0 cents, for 2 weeks' work, half up front, half after. It was enough to cover a month of Diane's treatment, maybe more. "Why me?" she asked. "There must be others." Ethan leaned forward. "The deal is sensitive. We need someone outside the industry, someone discreet. You're perfect." His gaze was intense, searching for something she couldn't pinpoint. Sarah nodded, but unease stirred in her gut. It was too neat, too abrupt. As she signed the contract, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Update. Dr. Ellis." Her stomach lurched. Dr. Thomas Ellis, the specialist overseeing Diane's experimental treatment, had contacted her weeks ago, claiming her linguistic skills had caught his eye through a contact at the Gilded Vine. His deal was clear: provide intel on high-profile clients, and he'd ensure Diane's treatment continued. Refuse, and the drugs would stop. Sarah had resisted, but the mounting bills left her cornered. She typed back, "Hired, starting today." His reply was swift. "Good. Don't forget who keeps your mother breathing." The threat lingered as she left the tower, Seattle's hum swallowing her thoughts. At the clinic that evening, Sarah sat by Diane's bed, watching her mother sleep. The monitors beeped steadily, a reminder of the fragile thread tying Diane to life. Sarah's mind drifted to that letter again, to the secrets her mother had buried. On impulse, she searched Diane's old files, tucked in a drawer. Among them was a faded employee ID from Brooks Innovations, dated years ago. Diane Bennett, financial analyst. Sarah's breath caught. Her mother had worked for the same company, now drawing Sarah into its orbit. Why had she never spoken of it? The discovery fueled her resolve. If Brooks Innovations held clues to her mother's past, Sarah would uncover them, even if it meant playing a dangerous game with Dr. Ellis. But as she stepped into the clinic's dim hallway, she overheard 2 nurses whispering about budget cuts, about patients like Diane being sidelined for higher priority cases. The injustice burned in her chest. This wasn't just about her mother. It was about a system that valued wealth over lives. Back at the Gilded Vine that night, Sarah served Ethan's table again, her nerves frayed. Lauren Mitchell's icy gaze tracked her, sensing a threat in Ethan's lingering attention. "Quite the linguist," Lauren said, her tone laced with disdain. "How? Lucky for you to catch Ethan's eye." Sarah forced a polite smile, but her mind was elsewhere. The stakes were higher now: her mother's life, her family's secrets, and a world of power she was only beginning to grasp. As she cleared the table, Ethan slipped her another note. "Prepare for Tokyo. We leave soon." Sarah's heart pounded. The door to Brooks Innovations was wide open, but what lay beyond was a maze of truth and deception she wasn't sure she could navigate. Sarah Bennett stepped off the private jet into the humid bustle of Tokyo, the city's sprawling skyline, a dazzling array of neon and steel. The towers, jagged against the evening sky, felt both thrilling and daunting. For the first time, she was thousands of miles from Seattle's gritty streets, from the clinic room where her mother, Diane, fought for every moment. Yet the weight of her choices, Dr. Ellis's threats, the secrets buried in her mother's past, and the enigmatic pull of Brooks Innovations followed her across the Pacific. As she adjusted her worn backpack, Ethan Brooks' voice broke her thoughts. "Quite a sight, isn't it?" He stood beside her, his polished demeanor softened by the long flight. "It's intense," Sarah admitted, her eyes tracing the distant lights. "I've only known Japan through textbooks and calls. Being here is different." Ethan nodded, his gaze lingering with a curiosity that unsettled her. "The culture's as intricate as the language. You'll need to navigate both this week." His words hinted at the high-stakes negotiation with Sakura Systems that had brought them here. Sarah nodded, her mind racing. She was an interpreter, yes, but also a pawn in a game she didn't fully understand. Their hotel, a sleek tower overlooking the Sumida River, was a world of glass and elegance, a stark contrast to the cramped apartment Sarah called home. As she unpacked in her suite, her phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Ellis. "First meeting tomorrow. I need Sakura's patent terms. Don't test me." Her stomach twisted. She deleted the message, but the threat lingered, a shadow over her mother's fragile life. To distract herself, she pulled out the faded employee ID she'd found. Diane Bennett, financial analyst at Brooks Innovations. The discovery had shaken her, raising questions about why her mother had left, why she'd never mentioned it. Sarah tucked the ID away, vowing to find answers, whatever the cost. The next morning, Sakura Systems headquarters, a striking blend of traditional Japanese design and modern technology, awaited them. Mr. Tanaka, the deputy director, greeted them in the lobby, his warm smile easing Sarah's nerves. "Ms. Bennett, your Japanese is remarkable," he said, after she translated Ethan's greetings with flawless precision. "Where did you learn?" "University of Washington," she replied in Japanese, "but I've always had a knack for languages." Tanaka nodded, impressed. "Mr. Sato, our CEO, will be pleased." The conference room, adorned with shoji screens and high-tech displays, hummed with anticipation. As lunch was served, sushi and regional delicacies, balancing cultural nuances with technical terms, but her focus faltered when the video feed flickered on, revealing Mr. Sato, Sakura Systems' elusive CEO. His face was partially shadowed, his glasses obscuring his features, but something about his posture struck her, a familiarity she couldn't place. "Miss Bennett," he said in Japanese, his voice deep and accented. "Your fluency is impressive." Tokyo dialect with an academic tone. Sarah froze, unsettled by his scrutiny. "Thank you," she managed, her pulse quickening. The meeting dove into semiconductor patents and market strategies. Sarah translated with precision, but part of her mind fixated on Sato. His questions about her background felt too personal, too deliberate. As the session ended, Ethan squeezed her shoulder. "You were brilliant," he said, his touch lingering. Sarah nodded, but her thoughts were elsewhere. In the lobby, she paused at a framed photo of a younger Sato receiving an award, his face partially visible, the curve of his jaw, the tilt of his head. It was like staring at the few childhood photos she had of her father, Michael Chen, who died in a boating accident when she was 6. Her heart pounded. It couldn't be. That night, alone in her suite, Sarah dialed Nathan Brooks, Ethan's younger brother, who'd been quietly helping her dig into Brooks Innovations' archives. "Nathan," she whispered when he answered, "I need you to check something. Sakura Systems CEO, Mr. Sato, see if there's any record of a Michael Chen connected to him." Nathan's voice was cautious. "That's a stretch, Sarah. Your dad's been gone for years. Just check," she pleaded, her voice breaking. After hanging up, she pulled out her father's old photo, worn from years, in her wallet. The resemblance to Sato was striking, stirring hope and dread. A knock on her door startled her. She opened it to find a note slipped underneath, written in Japanese. "Meet me at Meiji Shrine, near the Torii Gate, 8 p.m. Come alone." Her hands trembled. Against her better judgment, she took a taxi to the historic shrine, its lanterns casting a soft glow over ancient trees. A figure waited in the shadows, his glasses gone, revealing eyes that mirrored her own. "Sarah," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. I've waited so long to see you again." She stepped back, her breath hitching. You can't be him. My father's dead." The man, Michael Chen, shook his head, pain etching his features. "I had to vanish to protect you and your mother. I was a financial investigator, Sarah, hired to expose fraud at Brooks Innovations. What I found, money laundering, offshore accounts, put you both at risk." He reached into his jacket, pulling out a photo of Sarah as a toddler, laughing in his arms, Diane smiling beside them. "I've carried this every day." Tears stung Sarah's eyes. "You abandoned us," she whispered, anger and grief colliding. "Mom worked herself sick, and I gave up everything to keep her alive. Where were you?" Michael's shoulders sagged, building soccer systems, gathering evidence to bring them down. "I sent money for your tuition, arranged specialists for your mother. I watched from afar, Sarah, but I couldn't return. Not until now." He paused, his voice breaking. "The merger with Brooks Innovations is their latest scheme. I need your help to stop it." Sarah clutched the photo, her heart torn. This man was a stranger, yet his love was undeniable, woven into the anonymous scholarships, the medical miracles she'd never questioned. But helping him meant betraying Ethan, risking her mother's treatment and diving deeper into a web of lies. As she turned to leave, Michael called after her. "Your mother named you Sarah because it means princess. She believed you'd rise above the world's cruelty. Don't let her sacrifices be for nothing." The words echoed as Tokyo's lights blurred through her tears. A city of beauty and secrets, holding her future in its grasp. Sarah stood in the tranquil glow of Meiji Shrine, the weight of her father's revelation pressing against her like a tide. Michael Chen's plea to help expose Brooks Innovations' corruption rang in her ears, mingling with the image of her mother, Diane, tethered to clinic machines back in Seattle. Tokyo's cool night air brushed her skin, the distant city hum a reminder that she was far from home, caught in a tangle of loyalty, betrayal, and survival. The photo of her as a toddler, laughing in her parents' arms, burned in her hand. She wanted to trust Michael, to believe the father she'd mourned for 2 decades, but the cost of his truth was too high. Helping him could mean losing her mother, the anchor of her life. Back at the hotel, Sarah's phone buzzed with a new message from Dr. Thomas Ellis. "Sakura's patent terms. By midnight, or your mother's treatment stops." Her hands shook as she deleted the message, but the threat burrowed deeper. She sank onto the bed, her mind racing. Michael's evidence implicated Daniel Carter, Ethan's trusted advisor, in a money laundering scheme that stretched back years, a scheme her mother had been scapegoated for. But leaking information to Ellis could protect Diane, at least for now. The choice tore at her, a jagged wound between love for her mother and the justice her father sought. The next day, at Sakura Systems headquarters, Sarah translated with mechanical precision, her voice steady despite the storm inside. Ethan noticed her tension, his brow furrowing during a break. "You okay?" he asked, his tone softer than usual. They stood by a window overlooking Tokyo's skyline, the city's pulse a distant hum. Sarah forced a smile. "Just jet lag." His eyes searched hers, and for a moment she glimpsed something genuine beneath his polished exterior, a flicker of care that made her heart ache. "You're doing better than most would," he said. "I'm glad you're here." The words, simple yet sincere, stirred a dangerous warmth in her. She couldn't afford to trust him, not with so much at stake. As negotiations intensified, Michael, still posing as Mr. Sato, steered discussions toward Brooks Innovations' financial transparency, probing for weaknesses. Sarah translated his pointed questions, her heart pounding as Daniel Carter shifted uncomfortably. "Our records are spotless," Daniel snapped, his eyes darting to Ethan. Sarah caught the lie, her mother's old employee ID flashing in her mind. She excused herself, slipping into the restroom to text Nathan Brooks, Ethan's brother, who'd been digging into the company's archives. "Anything on Daniel Carter?" Nathan's reply came quickly. "Found encrypted files linked to offshore accounts. Need more time." Time was the one thing she didn't have. That night, Sarah met Michael in secret at a quiet tea house. its tatami mats and paper lanterns a fragile shield against the chaos outside. "I can't do this," she whispered, her voice breaking. "If I help you, Ellis cuts Mom's treatment, she'll die." Michael's face crumpled, his hands gripping the table. "I've spent years building evidence to clear your mother's name," he said. "She was framed, Sarah, by Daniel and others higher up. If we stop now, they win." He slid a USB drive across the table, its contents a digital arsenal of bank records and emails. "This can end it. But I need you to get me access to Brooks's internal servers." Sarah stared at the drive, her chest tight. "You're asking me to betray Ethan? To risk everything?" Michael's eyes glistened. "I'm asking you to save your mother's legacy." "She believed in you, Sarah. So do I." His words pierced her, conjuring memories of Diane's bedtime stories, of her mother's unwavering faith, even in their darkest days. Sarah took the drive, but the decision felt like a wound she'd never heal. Back in Seattle, Nathan's digging bore fruit. He called Sarah at dawn, his voice urgent. "Daniel's been funneling millions through shell companies. I found a file mentioning your mom. Diane was set up to take the fall for a $15 million 0-cent theft. But there's more. Ellis's name is in the records, tied to a biotech front." Sarah's blood ran cold. Ellis wasn't just a blackmailer. He was part of the same corruption Michael sought to dismantle. She texted Ellis the bare minimum, a vague summary of Sakra's terms, buying time while she planned her next move. The final negotiation day arrived, a high-stakes showdown in Sakura Systems' boardroom. Sarah's hands shook as she inserted Michael's USB drive into her laptop, uploading its contents to a secure cloud server Nathan had set up. As she translated, her eyes met Michael's, a silent agreement passing between them. But chaos erupted when Daniel's phone buzzed with an alert. Someone had accessed his private files. His face paled, then twisted with rage. "You!" he hissed, pointing at Sarah. "What did you do?" Before she could respond, he lunged, knocking her laptop to the floor. Ethan stepped between them, his voice low and dangerous. "Back off, Daniel." The room froze, the Sakura team watching in stunned silence. Daniel's eyes darted wildly. "She's sabotaging us!" he shouted, pulling a USB stick from his pocket and smashing it under his heel. "She's working with Sato." Sato's heart sank. Daniel had destroyed a decoy, but the real evidence was already uploaded. Michael stood, his calm demeanor unshaken. "It's over, Carter. The authorities have everything." As security escorted Daniel out, Ethan turned to Sarah, his expression a mix of betrayal and confusion. "What's going on?" he demanded. Before she could answer, her phone rang. "Dr. Ellis, you crossed me," he snarled. "Your mother's been moved to a private facility. You'll never find her unless you deliver Sato's files." Sarah's knees buckled, her vision blurring. Ethan caught her arm, his grip steady. "Sarah, talk to me." She pulled away, tears streaming down her face. "My mom's dying, and I'm the only thing keeping her alive." Her voice broke, raw with grief. "I'm sorry, Ethan." She fled the room, dialing Nathan as she ran. "Ellis has my mom. Help me find her." Nathan's voice was grim. "I'm on it. Stay safe." Back in Seattle, Nathan traced Ellis's facility to an unmarked clinic in the suburbs. Sarah caught the next flight, her heart splintering with every mile. She arrived to find Diane alive but critically weak. Her condition stabilized by a last-minute intervention Nathan had arranged through a contact. In the clinic room, Sarah held her mother's hand, Diane's breathing shallow but steady. "I'm here, Mom," she whispered, tears falling. Diane's eyes fluttered open, a faint smile crossing her lips. "My brave girl," she murmured before slipping back into sleep. Sarah found a letter in Diane's belongings, written in her mother's trembling hand. "Fight for those who can't, Sarah. That's your gift." The words burned, a call to finish what Michael had started. With Diane safe for now, Sarah returned to Seattle's fight, determined to see justice done. Sarah stood in the bustling atrium of Seattle's federal courthouse, the murmur of reporters and flashing cameras a stark contrast to the quiet of her mother's clinic room. The evidence Michael had entrusted to her, decades of financial records exposing Brooks Innovations' money laundering scheme, had been handed to prosecutors, sparking arrests and headlines. Daniel Carter and Dr. Thomas Ellis faced charges, their crimes exposed to the world, yet the victory was tempered by Lauren Mitchell's escape. She'd leveraged her family's influence to secure a deal, offering testimony to avoid prosecution. The injustice stung, a reminder that wealth could still buy freedom the poor could only dream of. Michael, no longer hiding as Mr. Sato, stood beside her, his face lined with resolve and regret. Nathan, his usual warmth replaced by fierce determination, had worked tirelessly with investigators. Ethan was there too, his expression guarded as he stood apart, Lauren nowhere in sight. Sarah avoided his gaze, the memory of his steady hand in Tokyo now tainted by the secrets she'd kept. As the press conference began, Michael took the podium, his voice firm in English. For years, Brooks Innovations laundered millions through shell companies, framing innocent employees like Diane Bennett to cover their tracks. Today, we present undeniable evidence. He gestured to Sarah, who stepped forward, her voice steady despite her grief. My mother was one of their victims. She nearly died because men like Daniel Carter and Thomas Ellis valued profit over lives. This is for her, and for everyone silenced by their greed. She held up Diane's employee ID, its faded photo a silent testament to her mother's sacrifice. The room erupted in questions, but Sarah's focus shifted to Ethan. His jaw tightened, his eyes meeting hers, with a mix of hurt and understanding. Federal agents had arrested Daniel and Ellis that morning, and indictments were pending against Lauren's father, a silent partner in the scheme. Sarah's hands clenched, her mother's letter echoing, "Fight for those who can't." After the conference, Ethan approached her in the courthouse lobby, his voice low. "Why didn't you tell me?" His pain was clear, but so was her own. "I couldn't," she said, her voice breaking. "Ellis held my mom's life over me. I had to choose." Ethan's eyes softened, but the distance between them was vast. "I would have helped you, Sarah. I thought—" He trailed off, the unspoken feelings between them heavy. Sarah shook her head, tears welling. "You're part of their world, Ethan. I can't be." She walked away, her heart aching but resolute. Michael found her outside, Seattle's skyline a cold backdrop. "You were incredible today," he said, his voice thick. "Diane would be proud." Sarah's throat tightened. "I want to believe that. But you weren't there when we needed you." The words were raw, but true. Michael nodded, his eyes glistening. "I'll spend my life making it right, Sarah. For you, for her." Their bond, fragile but growing, held a spark of hope, but trust would take time. In the weeks that followed, Sarah organized a community health fair in her neighborhood, a tribute to Diane's resilience. Neighbors gathered, sharing stories of Diane's quiet generosity, how she tutored kids, shared groceries during tough times. An elderly man squeezed Sarah's hand, whispering, "Your mama gave us strength. You're carrying it on." The words pierced her grief, a reminder that her fight wasn't just for Diane, but for everyone crushed by the system's weight. She vowed to keep going, even as Lauren's escape and Ethan's absence gnawed at her sense of justice. As she left the health fair, Sarah passed a mural on a weathered wall, painted by local teens, a vibrant scene of hands reaching skyward, breaking free from chains. It felt like a message from Diane, a call to endure. Sarah touched the mural, her fingers tracing the painted hands. The evidence had sparked change, but true justice, systemic, lasting, would demand more. She was ready, carrying her mother's strength and her own resolve into a future where no one would be left behind. Sarah stood in the community center's small classroom, the soft hum of a heater blending with the eager voices of her students. The room, once a neglected corner of Seattle's Port District, was now a beacon of learning, its walls covered with posters of Japanese kanji and world cultures. A dozen adults, factory workers, single mothers, retirees, sat at worn desks, their faces alight with purpose. They were people the system had forgotten, just as it had tried to forget Diane. Sarah's free Japanese classes, funded by a settlement from Brooks Innovations, were a tribute to her mother's belief in education as a path to freedom. As Sarah wrote a phrase on the whiteboard, "Kipu" means hope. She felt Diane's presence, a quiet strength guiding her forward. The months since the courthouse had been a blend of healing and purpose. The investigations sparked by Michael's evidence had unraveled Brooks Innovations' corrupt core. Daniel Carter and Dr. Thomas Ellis faced long sentences, their crimes a public reckoning. Yet Lauren Mitchell's deal remained a bitter pill, a reminder that the fight wasn't over. Sarah channeled her frustration into action, expanding the Diane Bennett Foundation to offer scholarships and healthcare advocacy for her community. Each life touched felt like a defiance of the forces that had nearly taken her mother. Her relationship with Michael was evolving. He'd stayed in Seattle, assisting prosecutors and supporting Sarah's foundation. Their conversations were cautious, shadowed by years apart, but his efforts, attending community events, sharing memories of Diane, eased Sarah's anger. One evening, he'd given her a worn diary, Diane's from their early years. Its pages brimmed with dreams for Sarah. "I want her to explore the world, to speak its tongues, to never feel small." Reading it, Sarah had wept, feeling her parents' love across time. She wasn't ready to fully forgive Michael, but she no longer shut him out. Ethan Brooks was a quieter pain. He'd left Brooks Innovations, passing leadership to Nathan, who was rebuilding the company with integrity. Ethan had emailed Sarah once, a short note apologizing for his blindness to the corruption and wishing her well. "You changed me, Sarah," he'd written. "I'll always carry that." She hadn't responded, the ache of their parting too fresh. Her feelings for him, complex, unspoken, were distractions she couldn't afford. Her purpose was larger now, rooted in the mural she passed daily. Hands breaking chains, a symbol of the fight she'd chosen. Sarah's days were filled with teaching and advocacy, her nights with planning. The foundation had launched a mobile clinic, bringing care to the Port District's underserved. At a recent community meeting, a father had thanked Sarah, tears in his eyes, for helping his daughter get diabetes treatment. "You're one of us," he said. "You understand." The words echoed Diane's letter, grounding Sarah in her mission. Yet the solitude of her path was heavy. Friends had drifted, unable to grasp her drive, and the constant battle against systemic inequity left her weary. One evening, as Sarah locked up the community center, a familiar figure stood outside. Ethan. His suit was gone, replaced by a simple coat, his face marked by a vulnerability she hadn't seen before. "I heard about your classes," he said, his voice soft. "I wanted to see it for myself." Sarah's heart thudded, torn between old warmth and new purpose. "Why are you here, Ethan?" He stepped closer, the streetlight casting shadows across his face. "Because I can't stop thinking about you, about what you're building. I want to help, if you'll let me." Sarah's breath caught. Part of her longed to reach for him, to mend the gap, but Diane's words held her steady. "Fight for those who can't." "I'm grateful," she said, her voice firm but kind, "but this is my path. I need to walk it alone for now." Ethan nodded, his eyes shining. "I understand. Just know I'm cheering for you, Sarah Bennett." He turned to leave, his figure fading into the night, and Sarah felt a pang of loss, but also clarity. Her heart belonged to her community, to the fight her mother had inspired. As she walked home, the mural glowed under a street lamp, its colors a promise of resilience. Sarah touched it, her fingers tracing the painted hands. The road ahead was daunting, more battles against inequity, more nights of doubt. But she was no longer the unseen server from the gilded vine. She was Diane's daughter, Michael's hope, a voice for the voiceless. With each step, she carried her mother's strength, ready to forge a world where no one was left behind.